I'm a guard at a secret military base. The bone-chilling secret we found at 3 a.m. The night was blacker than the deepest pit of hell, a silence so thick it felt alive. Marcus squinted through the chilling darkness at the towering fence that surrounded the secret military base. He couldn't shake off the creeping sensation that something was off. Each rustle of the wind sent chills down his spine. Were those shadows flickering behind the barbed wire? Or was it just his mind playing tricks on him? Suddenly, a blaring siren pierced the silence, sending pulses of fear racing through his veins. It was just after 3 in the morning, a time when even the bravest soldiers felt the chill of dread wrap around them. Rumors whirled among the recruits like a storm about strange lights in the sky and an unsettling presence lurking just outside the perimeter. Officers whispered about top-secret experiments. But all of that was just talk, right? He couldn't shake the feeling, though, that beneath all the chatter lay an unsettling truth. All his senses screamed danger, but a compulsion drove him to stay. He paced the cold concrete, heart thumping like a random drumbeat as cold sweat dripped down his back. That S when he heard it. A soft whimper, echoing from the shadows beyond his sight. He froze, listening as the sound morphed into a low growl. Marcus's pulse quickened, and he cursed under his breath. Could be anything, right? Maybe a stray animal? But in the pit of his stomach, he felt the twist of something primal and instinctual, the deep-seated desire to flee. Yet something kept him tethered to that spot. The curiosity clawed at him. What was lurking just beyond those walls? Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation, as Marcus took a tentative step toward the noise. The thump-thump of his heart echoed painfully in his ears. Just then, the shadows shifted, and he caught a glimpse of fleeting outline. Something or someone. His breath caught in his throat as he leaned closer, peering deeply into the dark. And then it happened. A blinding flash of light illuminated the scene, leaving him momentarily blinded. What he saw next would haunt him forever. The silhouette, pale and gaunt, stared back with eyes darker than the night itself, filled with an unsettling wisdom. It was not human, or at least not entirely. Marcus felt his legs weaken, a lump forming in his throat as questions flooded his mind. What had he stumbled upon? Was it an experiment gone wrong? Before he could think, the light flickered and vanished, returning the base to its twilight gloom. But the haunting eyes remained imprinted in his mind. The cold wind howled around him, and just like that, he was drawn deeper into a mystery that gnawed eagerly at the edge of his sanity. What secrets lay hidden in the shadows? And what were those eyes trying to tell him? The ground felt unsteady beneath Marcus's feet, as if the very earth was alive and pulsating with the unknown. He staggered back, heart racing, fighting every instinct to scream or run. Air rushed into his lungs like frozen ice, stinging his senses. He forced himself to focus, trying to shake off the panic that clawed at his gut. What had he seen? The shadows danced again, barely flickering at the edge of his vision. Was it just the consequences of his mind spiraling into madness? Or was there something truly horrible that lurked within the dark? Just then, another sound pierced the eerie calm, a sharp crack that echoed through the night. Adrenaline surged, pushing him to the very limits of flight or fight. Marcus felt he had to make a choice. He could run back toward the barracks, but what if he left someone behind? He wasn't just a guard, he was meant to protect. As he stood at the precipice of decision, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up, warning him of an unseen presence. He turned slowly, scanning the periphery of the fence, every detail stark and menacing in the moonlight. Suddenly, a figure stepped into the dim glow of the faint overhead lights. The sight rooted him in place. It was a woman, disheveled, with long black hair hanging in wild strands. Her clothes were tattered and stained, marks of a dreadful story waiting to unfold. She looked out of place and strangely familiar, as if she belonged to the very shadows he feared. "Help me." Her voice trembled, laced with fear. "Who are you?" Marcus couldn't help but rasp. His voice felt thick and heavy, trapped under layers of uncertainty. Instead of responding, she merely shook her head, drowning in a wild panic. "You don't understand. They're watching." Her eyes darted around, wide with an urgency that sent fresh shivers rushing through him. "Who's watching?" He stepped closer, though every part of him screamed to stay away. He had to know. He had to understand. "The ones that did this to me." She pointed toward the darkness beyond the fence, a gesture raw with desperation. "You have to believe me. They've taken others. You can't let them take you too." A bitter chill swept through him. His thoughts raced. What did she mean? Had the base been involved in something far more sinister than he believed? The shadows seemed to shift around him menacingly, reinforcing the woman's warnings. He needed answers, and yet fear strangled every attempt to go deeper into the unknown. "Please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "You have to come with me. You can't stay here." Marcus felt a jolt of hope. Maybe she was his key to understanding what lay hidden, the very thing that gnawed at him from the inside. Yet dread gripped him tighter than ever, wrapping around his heart with icy fingers. Before he could respond, the ground shook beneath their feet. The siren blared again, echoing a terrible urgency that propelled fear into every fiber of his being. What was that? He glanced back, momentarily distracted, his instincts fighting each other. "It's them," she shouted, her voice carrying panic. "You have to decide. Will you follow me or stay here and face your fate?" In that chaotic moment, Marcus stood suspended between his duty and the lure of a terrifying truth. His head spun as he considered the consequences of either choice. But one thing was clear: the darkness was no longer just a concept. It was real, and it was coming for him. With the sound of the metal fence rattling in the wind, he knew he couldn't stay. Not anymore. But as he reached out for her, the shadows shifted with a menacing intent, filling the air with an electric weight. "What have I done?" he muttered under his breath, his skin crawling as apprehension clawed at his spine. Could he really trust her? And as if in response, a brilliant flash erupted in the distance, illuminating a scene that would change everything. But what lay revealed within that blinding light? The blinding light fractured the night, a jagged blade piercing through layers of darkness. Marcus squinted, his heart racing, adrenaline spiraling. The woman gasped, the sound barely escaping her lips as she backed away, her eyes wide and fearful. Shadows twisted unnaturally near the fence, pulsating in response to the light, hinting at something monstrous lurking just out of sight. "What is happening?" he yelled over the cacophony of the siren, desperate for clarity. But her gaze was locked, transfixed by the radiance that spilled into the night like spilled gasoline, dangerous and beautiful. The ground he stood on trembled again, like a living thing intent on shaking free of whatever was hiding beneath. Marcus felt a surge of dread rise in him, overtaking the spark of hope he'd grasped just moments ago. "Come on." He reached for her, pulling her back from the edge of whatever awaited them there. If they stayed too long, they might join the others she had warned him about. But she jerked away, eyes darting to the bright flash as though it held the answers. "We have to go." Her voice rang out clearer now. "We can't let them find us." A piercing howl blasted through the air, shifting the very balance of the night, and Marcus's heart lurched. He could no longer stand at the precipice, frozen by the weight of uncertainty. They had to move, yet panic gnawed at him. What if they ran into more danger? But the darkness was as alive as the fears enveloping him. He could feel its eyes watching his every move, waiting for a moment of weakness. "Follow me," he shouted, instinctively grabbing her arm. She hesitated for a second, then turned and sprinted off toward the shadows, the very place he had been too terrified to go alone. They darted into the uncertain weave of night, the cold air stinging his lungs with every breath. Behind them, The ground moaned, an ominous sound that echoed their hurried steps. As they reached the tree just outside the base, Marcus felt a cold perspiration chill his skin. "What do you know?" he panted, forcing himself to keep pace with her. "Why is this happening?" She glanced back at him, the wildness in her eyes revealing a bitter experience. "You need to see for yourself. We can't trust anyone inside. They're lying to you, lying to all of us." The urgency in her voice ignited something within him as they pushed deeper into the concealed brush. The thudding of their feet matched the pounding of his heart, relentless and fierce. As they plunged further into the undergrowth, the light grew distant behind them, a faint flicker subsumed by the thick blanket of trees. Then, without warning, they stumbled into a small clearing where the ground was littered with what appeared to be fragments of shattered glass or bones. The very sight brought Marcus to a stop, breath hitching in his throat. "What is this?" "Evidence," she whispered, kneeling to sift through the remnants. "They're not just experiments. They've been taking people to turn them into whatever that is." Her fingers trembled as she held up a piece of white shard that shimmered like a star, tainted by what it had witnessed. The implications hit Marcus like a cold wave. This was no ordinary horror. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled as he leaned closer, the glint of moonlight setting the pieces aglow. Just then, a rustling sounded from behind the trees, sending a fresh bolt of panic through them. They weren't alone. The air turned thick with tension, the shadows deepening, threatening to swallow them whole. "I can't go back," he shouted suddenly, words tumbling out. "I can't just pretend this doesn't exist. How many more have suffered? How many more were taken?" The woman met his gaze, a grim understanding passing between them. "Then we fight. We expose this, make them pay." But just as she spoke, the shadows began to shift again, warping into figures that loomed just beyond their escape. Marcus felt the weight of the moment stretch unbearably, the chilling realization that something was coming, something wicked. "What's that?" Marcus whispered, staring into the dark. Anticipation gripped him like a vice, freezing him in place. And as he awaited the encroaching terror, a thought struck hard. If they kept searching, would they uncover salvation, or would they simply become part of the horror? The air thickened, electric with uncertainty, looming as they both braced for the unknown. In that heavy silence, something began to emerge from the trees. What monster was stalking them in the night? The air around them seemed to vibrate with a life of its own, breathing heavily, bearing down on Marcus as if urging him to run. He could barely process the shadow moving among the trees, its shape gelatinous and shifting. His instincts screamed at him to flee, but his feet remained rooted to the ground. A flicker of movement stole his breath, a creature, grotesque and inhuman. The woman's sharp intake of breath drew him from his paralysis. "We have to go," she hissed, her face a mask of fear and determination. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, Marcus turned and sprinted back through the clearing, pulling her along. They dashed through the underbrush, the distant sound of something heavier crashing through the trees following their every step. Branches scratched at their skin, tearing at their clothes, but they pressed on, fueled by sheer will. "Where?" he gasped, desperate to know where the path would lead. "Where do we go?" "North, to the old cabin. It's our only chance," she shouted, breathless but resolute as they moved. The ground trembled beneath them again, a sickening reminder of whatever hell had been unleashed. Sharp claws clawed at the air behind them, echoing a hunger that sent chills racing down Marcus's spine. He risked a glance behind. The creature was gaining on them. It was large, its eyes like burning coals, glinting with predatory glee. "Faster," he urged, lungs heavy with the weight of panic. They veered into a thicker part of the forest, pushing aside brambles and branches. The trees closed in, creating an oppressive tunnel around them. But beneath that canopy of greens and browns, the moonlight fought bravely to break through, lighting their way occasionally with eerie flickers. Her pace weakened, and Marcus felt a tantalizing dread clutch at his heart. He couldn't let her slow. "Stay with me," he yelled, reaching for her hand and squeezing for strength. In that moment, everything felt absurdly vivid: the sharp snap of a twig, the rustling leaves, the overpowering thud of their hearts as they thundered through the dark. Yet the reality of what was behind them was worse than any nightmare. As they approached the cabin, a structure nestled against the edge of the forest, hope surged momentarily like a fragile flicker in his chest. But even as he reached for the door, he realized it might be a trap, a snare meant for them to fall into. Yet he had no choice. They pushed inside, slamming the door shut behind them and bracing against it. The cabin felt like a tomb, air thick with dust and silence pressing against their ears. Marcus turned, scanning the dim interior. "What now?" he panted. She stood near a small window, peering through cracked glass. "We wait and we listen." His heart raced with uncertainty. The waiting felt as dangerous as running, but flying blind only brought them into the jaws of something they knew nothing about. They heard shuffling outside, heavy, deliberate. The creature was close, prowling like a cat toying with its prey. His thoughts spiraled to those who had been lost, the faces of the missing haunting him. How many had suffered at the hands of whatever lurked outside? And here they stood, on the brink of exposure. But who would believe them? Suddenly, the door rattled violently, an unholy growl tearing through the wood. Their eyes locked, shared a fleeting glance of despair. Before Marcus could react, the door splintered inwards, with shards bursting into the cabin. He pushed her behind him, ready to face whatever came next, resolve hardening into a shield. The shadows seeped in, forming a grotesque figure that grinned with predatory delight. Now, it rasped, "You will pay for your curiosity," as the reality of their position crashed down. Something within Marcus ignited. He clenched his fists, heart racing, determined to fight, to scream anything to shatter the darkness almost engulfing them. But in the very next moment, everything shifted with an unsettling clap. A deep thud echoed and the creature halted, as if sensing something or someone more powerful than itself. What had just broken the weight of despair? What else lay in the shadows, waiting to reveal itself? The air thickened with tension as the creature paused, its coal-black eyes flickering with a combination of hunger and surprise. For a brief moment, the grotesque grin faded, replaced by a furrowed brow of confusion. Marcus could hardly breathe, caught between the raw need to fight and the deep-seated urge to flee. "What was that?" he breathed, barely whispering the words as he gripped the splintered doorframe, muscles coiling like springs. The woman next to him, fear etched across her features, dared to step closer to the window. "I don't know," she whispered, voice trembling, her eyes scanning outside, seeking answers. But we're not alone outside. Shadows flickered in the moonlight, moving with a life of their own. A figure emerged, tall and imposing, stepping out from the tree-line like a whisper. Marcus's heart raced, already worn thin from the terror of the creature. That figure, though, seemed to command a different energy, a certainty that stank of violence. "Get back," he hissed, instinct urging him to shield her even more fervently. But she was already moving, curiosity outweighing instinct. The grim silhouette drew closer, revealing a long coat flapping in the night breeze, blending with the darkness. The creature from moments before snorted angrily, its twisted form vibrating with rage. The newcomer halted, unfazed, locking eyes with the grotesque apparition. "What do we have here?" the figure barked, voice a low growl. He looked impossibly calm against the chaos unfolding around them. The creature screeched, a sound that reverberated through Marcus's bones. This monstrous spawn of nightmares did not take kindly to intruders. But the man stood firm, unfazed by the visual terror, hands at his sides composed, like a dam against a raging flood. "I said," the figure continued, eyes glimmering with authority, "leave them." It was as if a switch had been flipped. The creature recoiled, drawn back from its prey as though struck by an unseen force. Its malevolent gaze scoured the cabin one last time before retreating into the shadows with an eerie, slithering motion. Silence enveloped them, hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Heart pounding, Marcus exchanged a glance with the woman beside him. What just happened? Had they been saved? "Are you okay?" The stranger addressed them, voice softer but still holding a metallic edge. Who are you? Marcus asked, his voice shaking despite his best effort to contain it. I'm a guardian, the man replied, staring into the night, gauging the retreated creature. But this isn't a place just for guardians anymore. They're getting bold. What do you mean? She pressed, taking a tentative step forward, drawn to this guardian's power. He turned to her, grave concern shadowing his features. What you've stumbled into is far more than you realize. This forest, it's alive with secrets. Hidden paths, lost souls. Before he could finish, a chilling wail sliced through the air, echoing from the depths of the shadows. Panic flared anew in Marcus's chest. We need to leave. Now. We can't stay here. The guardian's gaze sharpened. If you think running will save you, you're wrong. They'll hunt you down. You have to understand. This place is a threshold to much worse. Fear rushed over Marcus like cold water pouring over his head, filling him with a desperate energy. Then what do we do? How can we survive this? The guardian hesitated, a brief flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. Whatever lay ahead would require an answer he wasn't ready to give. You can't face this alone. Follow me. Thick tendrils of darkness swirled back, encircling the guardian, wrapping him in a cage of shadows. He struggled against the grip, fierce determination etched on his face. You need to learn more about what's happening. Trust no one. Except me. The pressure squeezed around them, pulling Marcus and the woman toward the door, his heart racing in chaos. Could they trust this guardian? Or was he yet another trap in a world awash with shadows? And just as quickly as it began, the shadows receded with a chilling screech, the guardian's figure vanishing from sight. What do we do now? The woman gasped, glancing at Marcus with wide, frightened eyes. His gut twisted, uncertainty clouding his thoughts. We need to find him, we need answers. But where do we even start? With the forest alive around them, Marcus felt the weight of that question settle heavily on his shoulders, ready to eddy back into the darkness. Was it too late to discover the truth? Or were they merely victims prepared to step deeper into chaos? The night had only just begun to reveal its secrets. The wind picked up, howling through the trees like a restless spirit. Marcus glanced outside, eyes wide, searching for the guardian, for anything in the thick fog that had cloaked the forest after his mysterious disappearance. The shadows danced across the clearing, and doubt gnawed at him. Maybe he has gone for good, the woman said, her voice shaky, hinting at a fragile hope tethered to fear. What if he was lying? What if we're just bait for whatever lurks out there? Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. We can't think like that. We need to act. If we stay here, we're sitting ducks. We've got to move. She hesitated, fear flickering across her face like a flame struggling to stay lit. Move where? We don't even know what's out there. We could be walking right into a trap. His gut twisted at her words. They were marooned in a place thick with death's shadow. But every instinct told him they couldn't linger. We have to take that chance, he insisted, trying to sound brave even as he fought against the whirling tide of dread. It's the only way. She finally nodded, a faint tremor in her hands as she backed away from the window. Then let us find a way out of this cabin. With cautious footsteps, they navigated the creaky floorboards, inching toward the door. But as he reached for the knob, a loud crack echoed through the stillness, reverberating like thunder. Marcus froze. Did you hear that? The woman nodded, eyes wide. Came from outside. The crack was soon followed by shuffling, low and guttural. Panic surged within him as he swung open the door, revealing the black void of the forest. The air felt charged, heavy, as if something terrible teetered on the brink of existence. Maybe we should go back, she began, but her words were cut off by a soft, slithering patter against the ground, growing nearer. They spun around and were met with the haunting sight of delicate, unearthly flowers, a stark contrast against the night. Petals glowed in ghostly phosphorescence, revealing a path leading deeper into the forest. But at its end a figure cloaked in dark mist, staring at them with hollow eyes. What is that? She whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus couldn't answer. His heart thudded in his ears. The creature from earlier was gone. But this new presence was decidedly worse. Its aura oozed with a chilling malevolence that sent shivers up his spine. Without thinking, he grabbed her hand. "We have to run." But just as they turned to flee, the forest erupted with a guttural roar, a sound that shook the very ground. The path of flowers wilted, petals curling as though suffocating under an unseen weight. Time seemed to stretch, the air becoming thick and suffocating. "Marcus!" she screamed, panic seeping into her voice as she stumbled backward, catching herself just in time to halt their flight. The figure moved closer, the shadows swirling around it like a cloak. "Stay," it rasped, the words slithering through the air, wrapping around them like a vice. "You must learn what?" Marcus snapped, desperation igniting his fury. "What more can happen? We're already in hell." But the figure did not respond. Instead, it stepped forward with a sinister grace, its very presence clawing at Marcus's sanity. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he could see beyond the surface a twisted reality of screams entangled in darkness. Then, just as quickly, the feeling faded, and he was staring at the figure again, its hollow gaze boring into him. The truth lies beneath the secrets of the forest that you won't comprehend. In that instant, the shadows rose, swirling toward him like a storm, and he felt his consciousness teeter on the edge of a void. "Marcus!" she shouted, pulling him back. "We need to go. Now!" He gripped her arm, fighting against the invisible pull, air thick with fear and confusion. "But what does it mean? What secrets?" "I don't know. But we have to find a way to escape this madness before it consumes us." As they dashed toward the safety of the cabin, the roar echoed behind them, a haunting reminder of the lurking dread that would not relent. What awaited them in the shadows, feeding upon their fears? The forest held its breath as they crossed the threshold back into the cabin. Was it truly a sanctuary, or merely a temporary refuge from a greater chaos stalking them? The night stretched on, waiting for the next revelation to pierce the veil. The door slammed shut behind them, the sound resonating through the small cabin like a gunshot. Marcus leaned against it, chest heaving, heart pounding in his ears. The dim light flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. He could still feel the weight of the figure's gaze, as if it had clawed its way into his very soul. "What was that thing?" the woman gasped, her eyes darting around the room as if expecting the darkness to spill in through the walls. "Felt alive." "I don't know." Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead, trying to steady his racing thoughts. "But it knew something. Something we don't." She stepped back, pressing against the counter, frustration and fear radiating from her. "What do? We can't just wait for whatever that was to come for us." The wind howled outside, branches scratching against the windows like ghostly fingers. He stared into the blackness just beyond the glass, the memories of the whispers pulling at the edges of his mind. "We need to figure out what it meant by the truth lies beneath. There has to be something in this cabin that can help." As he searched, his gaze landed on an old wooden chest in the corner, partially hidden by a tattered curtain. His pulse quickened. The chest had a strange aura, as if it held secrets begging to be uncovered. "Help me with this." Together, they approached the chest, their breaths mingling with an electric mixture of fear and anticipation. The wood was cold to the touch, and it creaked ominously as they lifted the lid. Inside lay a tangle of brittle papers and a dusty lantern. It looked like a relic from another world, faded blueprints, hand-drawn sketches of the forest above a map. "What is this?" she questioned, her voice barely above a whisper. "It looks like a layout of the area." Marcus stumbled over his words, tracing a finger along the paper. "And see here?" He pointed at a marked spot deep within the forest. "There's something there. A circle, something significant." "Significant how? That doesn't help us now," she snapped, frustration boiling over. He shot her an annoyed glance. "I don't know. But if we're going to escape this nightmare, we might need to confront whatever those shadows want us to learn." Just as the words left his mouth, an explosion of sound erupted outside. The cabin shuddered. Nails popped from the wood as something large and heavy crashed against it. They both jumped back, eyes wide. What now? She cried, but Marcus felt a sick exhilaration clawing its way up inside him. This was the kind of moment he'd been waiting for. A call to action. Follow me. He grabbed the lantern and swung it around, illuminating the room. Together, they pushed through the door, aiming for the misty path from earlier, the one that shimmered with glowing flowers. Stepping outside, they were met with the chilling embrace of the fog. The sound of scratching, low growls, and the rustle of leaves filled their ears. Eyes glowing in the dark watched them, watching their every move. Maybe this was a mistake, she murmured, nervously gripping his hand as they stumbled down the glowing path toward whatever awaited them. I can't turn back now, he declared, the determination drowning out his fear. Not after everything. We'll figure out what it means, what lies beneath, and maybe it'll show us a way out. But as they reached the end of the path, the air changed. It became thick with shadows, swirling as if alive. What used to be a beautiful clearing transformed into a pit of darkness. The ground shuddered ominously, and the flowers wilted, their beauty rotting away. Marcus, we need to go back. The voice faded as the shadows thickened around them, pulling at Marcus and the woman, swallowing them whole. This was it. Whatever lay beneath was awakening, and they were caught at its mercy. Suddenly, a deep voice rose from the darkness, echoing around them like thunder. You have come to learn. Learn what? He shouted back, fighting the encroaching grips of dread pulling him down. The only answer was silence, heavy and pregnant with knowledge he feared to grasp. As the darkness closed in, a blinding light flared behind him like a beacon, sharp and searing. What truth was about to be revealed? Would they escape the abyss, or would they succumb to the forest's haunting call? The blinding light enveloped them, washing over the encroaching shadows like a tidal wave breaking through a nightmarish dream. Marcus squinted, feeling a rush of heat as if standing too close to a fire. The woman beside him gasped, her grip tightening on his arm. I can't see, she shouted, panic slicing through her voice. Just stay close, Marcus urged, forcing himself to breathe despite the adrenaline surging through him. He took a step forward, crossing the threshold where the shadows met the light. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. No rustle of leaves, no growls, only the pulsing glow surrounding them. As the light receded, they found themselves in a vast, illuminated chamber. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, adorned with strange symbols that flickered like the remnants of a dying star. Glowing stones lined the walls, pulsating rhythmically, casting gentle waves of luminescence across the ground. Felt alive, breathing. Where are we? She murmured, awe mingling with unease. I think this is what the map was pointing to, Marcus replied, his heart racing. He stepped deeper into the chamber, fully aware that behind them, the shadows were watching. Waiting. In the center of the room was a stone pedestal, ancient and imposing. Upon it lay a single object, partially obscured by dust, a crystal orb that glimmered like a trapped galaxy. It hummed softly, sending vibrations through the air. With each step they took closer, the low hum intensified, resonating in their bones. Don't touch it, she warned, worry painted across her features. But Marcus was drawn to it, as if it were pulling him in. I have to see. He reached a trembling hand toward it, his fingers brushing against the orb's surface. In an instant the chamber transformed. Images swirled around them, a tapestry of memories. Visions of ancient ceremonies performed at the same altar they now stood before. Faces of people long gone flickered like ghosts, their expressions twisted in fear and longing. Marcus felt the weight of their despair pressing in on him, suffocating and haunting. They were afraid of something they had to keep hidden. He whispered, the realization crashing over him like a wave. Maybe whatever it is tied to what we saw outside, she suggested, stepping nearer. The shadows. What if they're in the orb too? Before he could respond, the orb pulsed violently, sending a shockwave through the chamber. The whispers from before returned, overlapping and frantic, their words clawing at Marcus's mind. Voices mixed with shrieks, drowning out reason. Listen, he shouted. But as he did, the orb flared bright. A vision erupted before them, projecting onto the walls dark figures rising from the ground, bound by chains of shadow, their cries echoing through time. Marcus, the woman trembled, clutching his arm. This is getting worse. We should leave now. He hesitated, a tug of war playing out in his chest. There was something vital here, a piece of the puzzle. We might find a way to stop this, to understand what we're up against. But just as he contemplated the choice, the shadows surged toward them, swallowing the light whole. The air chilled, and the whispers turned to screams, echoing with promises of death and despair. Then the earth beneath them trembled. The pedestal cracked, and the orb trembled violently, releasing a surge of raw energy. "Run!" he shouted, yanking her away from the pedestal as it shattered, sending shards flying like daggers. Suddenly, the very ground beneath them opened up, a chasm that thrashed with shadows. Marcus wrestled with fear and instinct, pulling her as they darted back toward the passage they had entered. But behind them, the screech of the shadows intensified, a guttural roar of rage, and Marcus knew they had awakened something far worse than they imagined. "Are we going to survive this?" she gasped, glancing back at the chaos unfolding behind them. "I don't know," he replied, desperate to reach safety. "But we have to keep moving." As they sprinted into the inky blackness, the shadows clawed at their heels, taunts echoing through the void. They were far from finished. The truth still lurked, ready to reveal its horrific secrets. Could they escape the darkness, or had they already sealed their fate? The sound of their frantic footsteps echoed in the darkness, swallowed by the void behind them. Marcus could feel the shadows closing in, sharp and hungry, gnashing at their heels like wild beasts unleashed. Each surge of terror in the chamber propelled him further into the unknown, adrenaline thrumming through his veins as urgency sharpened his focus. "Keep moving," he shouted, dragging her along as panic threatened to claw at his own resolve. The exit loomed ahead, a sliver of light against the consuming darkness, a promise of escape. "Are they still following us?" she panted, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Her voice trembled, and with every glance back, Marcus felt the weight of the shadows pressing closer. "I don't know." He pressed onward, fueled by survival instinct alone. Just ahead, the passage widened, and Marcus skidded to a stop. "We need to find another way out." The walls pulsed with a low hum, resonating with their fear. Strange symbols glowed faintly, a soft rhythm beating like a heart. He could almost hear whispers coaxing him, urging him to stay, to uncover the secrets wrapped in the very fabric of this eerie place. "No, no," he grunted, shaking his head as if to scatter the unsettling voices blooming in his mind. "We can't take the risk." She gripped his arm, her nails biting into his skin. "What about the orb? What if it holds the answers? The shadows? They must want it back." Before he could articulate the danger, a howl erupted behind them, raw and unearthly. The sound reverberated through the passage, shaking him to his core. They exchanged a glance, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Neither was willing to let the other face the unknown alone as they turned to sprint once more. A thick wall of darkness materialized in front of them, blocking their escape. The ominous shadows twisted and coiled, becoming a solid barrier, an arm reaching out as if to snatch them back into the abyss. "Marcus!" she screamed as he skidded to a halt, his heart hammering against his ribs. The shadows writhed, threatening to snuff out the glimmer of light behind them. It was a dead end. They were trapped. "Think!" he shouted, already scanning for any sign of an alternative path. Every instinct screamed at him to fight against the tide of encroaching darkness. He had to find hope, something, anything to cling to. Then it hit him, that pulsing rhythm in the walls. The symbols. He pointed, desperation clawing at him. "They're not just decorations, they're a language, a command." "What are you implying?" Her voice was laced with fear, but beneath it, he saw a flicker of hope sparking in her eyes. "If we can harness the energy of the chamber, maybe we can push back the shadows. We need to recite the engraving." "Recite? The what?" She looked skeptical, but he was throwing caution into the air, grasping at desperation. The orb showed us the past. These symbols are connected to the same magic. It's a chance we have to take. With a deep inhale, he stepped toward the glowing symbols, trusting his instincts. He could feel the pulsing power thrumming beneath his fingertips, urging him forward. He reached out, tracing the lines with his hand. Each symbol sparked with energy, the pulse of history igniting his senses. "Repeat after me," he called out, hoping she'd follow. "We bind the shadows that torment." As she echoed his words, the shadows shrieked, vibrating aggressively. The darkness around them quivered, the barrier vibrating with each syllable. The air crackled with tension as the light began to brighten in response. Suddenly, the roar of the shadows crescendoed, and in a flash of pain, a dark claw shot out, grasping for her. "Watch out!" Marcus yelled, yanking her away just in time as the shadow barely missed her. The barrier shook once more, and as they continued chanting, the symbols lit up, illuminating a possible escape above a narrow opening in the ceiling that sparkled like stars. "Hop!" he urged, but just then, the shadows surged, screaming in agony as the light grew. "Marcus, hurry!" Her voice sliced through his racing thoughts. He gritted, his teeth, feeling time slipping between his fingers. Could they truly hold back the darkness long enough? Or would they become one with the shadows? The question struck harder than the claws of fear gripping his heart. "Now!" he shouted, pulling her towards the shimmering portal, fate hanging in the balance as darkness clawed at their retreat. Would the light protect them, or would the shadows reclaim what they believed was theirs? As they reached the shimmering opening, a brilliant light burst forth, casting shadows away in a kaleidoscope of colors. Marcus pushed her through first, then scrambled in behind her, just as the darkness lunged with ferocious hunger. The moment he crossed the threshold, a rush of heat enveloped him. The air tasted different, thicker, almost electric. They tumbled into another world, landing hard on a soft, mossy ground. The remnants of twilight clung to the horizon, but the oppressive darkness was gone. Marcus gasped, trying to take in their new surroundings. They were in a breathtaking glen, alive with vibrant colors, illuminated by dancing lights, overhead fireflies, orbs swirling like disconnected stars. "Are we safe?" the woman whispered, disbelief painted across her features. I think so," Marcus said, still catching his breath. The realization that they had outpaced the terror, if even momentarily, filled him with an immense relief. They looked around, taking in the peaceful beauty. It felt surreal after the chaos they had just endured. The air was tinged with the scent of blooming flowers, and the soft rustling of leaves created a gentle symphony. "Those symbols they worked," she breathed, a hint of awe creeping into her voice. "We need to figure out what this place is and the role we play in it. Yes, we might escape the shadows, but we can't ignore what we uncovered," he replied, steadying himself. "We have to find answers not just for us, but for everyone back there." They ventured deeper into the glen, glancing at every shadow, half expecting the darkness to chase them yet again. But this felt different. Each step forward seemed to ground them in their purpose. Marcus could feel something changing inside him. The weight of fear and doubt lessened, and determination took its place. "I was terrified," she admitted as they walked, "but we did it together." The bond they formed amidst the darkness flickered like the fireflies surrounding them. "Together," he repeated, glancing at her. "That's how we'll find a way back, and expose what's been preying on people. We need to find a way to connect this place back to the military base." As they navigated through the glen, they stumbled upon a path that seemed to glow with the same symbols as before. "Do you think?" she began, glancing up at him. "Maybe this is the way. If we follow this path, it might lead us to the heart of this mystery," he suggested, his voice gaining strength. With newfound resolve, they followed the path, the symbols pulsing in rhythm with the thudding of their hearts. It felt like the earth beneath them was guiding them, as if it could sense their mission. Marcus kept reassuring himself, one foot in front of the other. They were getting closer. Eventually, they entered a clearing where the trees opened up to reveal a grand archway wrought from twisted vines and ancient roots, rising majestically like an invitation. In the center stood a stone altar, engraved with the same symbols they had encountered before. This is it, Marcus whispered, awestruck. What do we do? She asked, looking around as if seeking a sign. He stepped closer to the altar, feeling a strange warmth radiate from it. I think we have to perform a ceremony of some sort like the visions we saw in the chamber, he suggested. Maybe it will bind those shadows for good or give us the means to confront them. Together then? She asked, determination rekindling in her eyes. Together, he affirmed as they grasped each other's hands, forming a circle around the altar. They began to speak the words they had learned from the glowing symbols earlier, their voices joining like a chant filling the vibrant air around them as they spoke. A wind kicked up, swirling around them with invigorating force. The altar responded, igniting in brilliant light, casting away the shadows that had haunted them. The symbols glowed brighter, the energy rippling through the two of them, coursing with purpose. Keep going, they urged, adrenaline pumping through their veins as their voices crescendoed. A figure began to materialize. In the light, a familiar shape, cloaked in the same rhythmic energy that surrounded them, now free from the shadows. It was the Guardian, his earthy eyes fierce and determined. You've done it, he stated clearly, a proud grin breaking loose. What now? Marcus asked, hope glimmering. The shadows are bound. They seek to escape, but they are weakened by your bond, the Guardian explained. Yet the fight isn't over. Marcus locked eyes with the woman, and together they stepped forward with fierce determination. Then we face whatever remains, she declared firmly, the journey cloaking her in strength. The air crackled with energy around them, the oppressive darkness still loomed somewhere beyond. But this time, they weren't afraid. They understood now their struggle against the shadows could be transformative, not just for them, but for all those who had been taken. Let us bring the light back, Marcus said, heart uncaged and ready to unveil the truth behind the forest's labyrinth. Here, in this moment, he knew they were more than survivors. They were warriors, stepping forward into a new dawn, ready to fight for those who could not. As they prepared to step through the archway together, the light guided them deeper into the heart of the mystery. They had discovered that real power came from unity, lighting a path through the darkness for others. Now it was time to reveal the hidden horrors beneath the surface, returning home, but not the same people who had left. This was their beginning. Don't let this adventure end here. You need to subscribe now to catch each pulse-pounding moment of our next thrilling saga. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and make sure the story reaches every pair of eager eyes. Flood the comments below with your wild reactions and theories about how this journey might continue. And don't wait even one more second to share this breathtaking conclusion with at least 5 friends who can't miss out. Your support means everything to us.